Matchups are one of the most difficult and harder to learn skills in the game. So today I'm going to be breaking down a step-by-step process of how exactly you can learn and win any matchup that you struggle with. So let's say you hate versing champs like Darius, champs like Alawi or Heimerdinger. This video will teach you exactly how to figure out how to learn that matchup, so the next time you play against them, you're going to have a much better time taking them out and putting them into the dirt. So if that sounds good to you, then let's get started. The first step to being able to win any matchup that you play against is your preparation, especially if you've struggled against a champion before or it's a champion you don't really like versing. If you're not prepared, you're going to have a really bad time. And I've seen it time and time again from my students across all different ranks where they play against a champion that they hate versing. They might have lost to it before, let's say Yorick for example, and I'm watching the VOD they bring me, and they're just playing way too scared. They're just farming, they're not punishing, they're not looking for opportunities, they're not necessarily doing anything too badly, they're not getting solo killed or dying to gags or anything, but they're slowly bleeding up, they're not gaining advantages, they're missing a lot of opportunities, but most importantly, they're not learning anything. If you're playing, let's say you play Garen and you've never versed Darius before, but you look up at tier list and you say, okay, Garen loses to Darius, and you play scared, your learning is going to be horrible. You need to be actively trying to win. You need to be looking for trades, looking for punishes, and either failing and getting experience in trading, getting repetitions in it, or doing well and feeling what a good trade looks like, knowing the conditions for trading well. For Darius, if you give him 5 stacks, probably the trade is bad. If you don't, the trade might actually be quite good for you. You need to build that experience, you need to be taking trades, or you're not going to learn anything. So go into that matchup actively trying to win is step one of your preparation. And that seems like very straightforward advice, but go into it actively trying to win. Don't just go in there brain dead, caveman style, just right clicking on them and find them to the death. You need to be pre-planning exactly how you want the trades to go. And that comes with step two, visualize the matchup in your head. What do the trades look like? Who gets priority level 1? And I even recommend writing down your plan. Who gets priority level 1 should be something you decide actively going into the game. Now, of course, we have to be flexible. Not everyone we verse is going to play super well. Maybe they should get priority, but they give it to you and you can take it. Of course, feel free. But if you go into that matchup thinking, okay, this champion, this Darius, should be able to get priority against me if he plays well, you're not going to get caught off guard. If he gets priority, he's probably stronger than you level 1. He's probably going to get level 2 before you, level 3 before you. So you're going to be mentally prepared for that and not get caught off guard. And if you know you get priority, that means you can be more confident in your level 1 trade, more confident in attacking level 2 versus 1, and vice versa. So you can kind of see the pattern there. You need to visualize the matchup in your head. Do a little bit of shadow boxing before the game begins. Don't just go, shit, Darius, I don't like this matchup. Alt tab, change song, stay in Discord with the boys and keep chatting to them. That's not going to give you a good result. You need to be visualizing the matchup, head into it, trying to think about what the trades look like. So for example, if you're Garen versus Darius, you don't want to give him 5 stacks, what does the trade look like? Probably you're just taking a nice short trade, QE run away, or lead with E and then cleanse his W slow with Q, stuff like that. It depends on your mastery on the champion, you know how lost in the details you get, but it's really important that you have a rough idea. Having a bad plan is better than having no plan at all, because then you're going to learn. If you go into it actively trying to do a certain trade and it doesn't go well, your learning will be way better than getting shit on and just going, it's a tough matchup with not real much thought. It's really important that you get a lot more specific on how you want the trades to go heading into the game. And that's really important, not just for winning that one game there, but for your review process later on, which we will be covering in this video. And step 3 for your preparation, the long trade versus short trade mentality. So what this means is every champion is going to prefer, every matchup you play in, one party will prefer short trades and one will prefer long trades. So for example, if you're playing Olaf and you're up against a Gangplank, he wants short trades and you want long trades. If you only take short trades, you're going to lose. If you only take long trades, you're going to win. So of course, League's not black and white like that. Some, if you get a free QE onto GP and don't lose any HP, it's probably going to be fine. But if you go into the game with that mindset, I want this type of trade, I only want short trades. I'm playing Jax versus Set, I only want the short trades. Or I'm playing, Camille versus Trundle, I only want short trades, that type of mindset, you're going to have a much higher success rate. Even if you've never versed Trundle before, even if you've never played these matchups before, if you have a rough idea of who wants the short trades, who wants the long trades, you're going to have a much higher success rate in that matchup. And if you don't know, a lot of the time the rune will actually give it away for you. Champs that take Conqueror and Lethal Tempo, they want long trades most of the time. Champs that like Grasp or Phase Rush, Electrocute, that type of thing, they want short trades, so that will give it away. If both parties have a similar rune, so let's say you're playing Olaf versus a Trundle. That comes with matchup knowledge. Olaf wants long trades most of the time, but versus Trundle, you want a short trade, so that's going to come back to your champion mastery. But to be honest, a lot of the time you can figure that out just by critically thinking. As long as you're good at your champion, as long as you have your champ mastery, it's not going to be as confusing as it sounds. Just pre-plan heading into the game. Who wants the short trade, who wants the long trade, and then try to execute that even if you haven't really played the matchup before. How to learn your matchups. Now I'm going to be going through a step-by-step process you can follow to learn any matchup in the game. But step one is to play the matchup at least once with that preparation that we talked about. I actually don't recommend you try to study a matchup that you've never played before. The reason for that is you might not have played 20 or 30, it'll take a big chunk of your time, it's not really worth it, and it's hard to apply everything at the same time. But the most important one, you need that experience. You need to play the matchup and feel what a losing trade is, what a winning trade is, what worked, what didn't, and have a foundation to start on. And most importantly, you need to have an emotional connection to that matchup. To be honest, you might not like this, but I want you to get shit on just one time. I want you to struggle in that matchup a little bit, maybe not get completely run over, but lose some trades, win some trades, and really have a foundation to work on, but also have an emotional connection to that matchup. You're going to learn way more looking at your VOD with that fire. I never want to lose this champ again. That's so annoying. I lost my team the game. And you're going to really look to improve on that matchup. If you're just chilling and you have a more casual approach, you look up someone's VOD. Yeah, I've never played Darius vs Mbessa. How's it go? You watch Dairy King kill him level 2. Sweet, I'll try that myself. The learnings are not going to be at the same level because you've never experienced it before. You didn't know how it's going to go. You're just watching it for the sake of watching it. I'm not saying you can't do that. You know, if you're on loading screen, Chancellor, you see the matchup, you can look up, some guides. I've got some for Olaf, matchup guides, stuff like that. But it's still important that you experience a matchup once before you go a deep dive, put a ton of time into it, because you need a foundation to start on. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, okay, after playing a matchup and getting completely ran through, how do I find a good VOD to learn from? And of course, you can always use YouTube, look up a matchup, Jax vs Camille, you'll find a bunch of different examples, but in my opinion, that's not the best way, because not only would a lot of those matchups be cherry-picked of games where the guy got super fed, got a couple kills from ganks, and then ran over the enemy top, but a lot of them will be outdated as well. It's better to find a more raw VOD in the wild, and the best way to do it is utilizing this website. No, they don't sponsor me yet, they should after this video, but the best way is to use Dplo to find one tricks of the champion that you play. So let's say you are a Riven player. Let's say you like to play Riven. We look up Riven on this website. We click OTPs to get a big list of the one tricks. Now, it's very likely if you're watching me, you're from NA or EU. If you're from the other regions, feel free to use those. But the good thing about playing in the West is you can make a level 1 account on any server, where the problem with Korea is you need a Korean ID number to make an account. So just ignore it. Unless you're playing in GM and Chal on different servers, you don't need Korean VODs anyway. So for the 99% of the player base, make a level 1 EU account if you don't have one, or NA if you're EU or Brazil, anything like that, and utilize this. So go on NA, and we just open up just 3-4 of the NA Riven 1 tricks that we like. Go on EU, do the exact same thing, just open up the 3-4 best ones, and then save them all to a little folder on your browser, on your Google Chrome, whatever you use. And then every day you can go through your big list of matchups, or big list of players, just filter by your champion, of course, go through it and try to find a matchup that you like. Let's say you want to study Riven vs Garen. You keep losing to Garen from your games in gold, games in platinum, whatever it may be. You go through every day, like, boom, this guy's versus Garen, maybe someone else has if you go through it, and then you find that example. So when you find a player that's played the matchup that you like, it might not happen instantly, you might not find it the same second, but keep in mind, you don't only have to watch the challenger ones, you go through all these EU Rivens, and you're probably going to find one that played the matchup that you want to find. In A as well, you can utilize all these to your advantage. Let's say we want to study Riven versus Renekton, and this guy here, he played Riven versus Renekton. What you're going to do is you're going to copy the name, go onto your client. So we'll open up the client now, and then I'll even go back to do it from scratch here. You click your little face here, you slap their name on the top right, go into match stream, and with this you can find the VOD that you want to watch and download it and just watch it through the client. So if we remember his score, it was 9, 8, and 7. This game here, we click that download, and then when you click this play button, the matchup will open up. You can study it, you can take down your notes, follow the process that we're going to touch on, and learn as much as possible. And if you just do every 4 days, you just look up your list of Riven players, just open up that folder, and just browse through all the matchups that they're playing. You're probably going to find the matchups that you want to learn, the matchups you want to study, and if you do this over a long period of time, your matchup mastery is going to improve significantly. So now that you know how to find a high quality VOD, it's important to know the process while watching it. It's not as simple as grabbing your bag of Doritos, slumping in your chair. Actually, my viewers aren't going to be eating that. It's going to be more so a protein shake, but either way, while you're watching it, you need a lot of intention. You need to know what to be looking for. And one thing I recommend you do is try to visualize what you're doing in a situation. Actively think while you're watching it. Don't just watch it like it's a Netflix show. Actively think, what would I do? Where would I click? Would I use my abilities now? And if they do something different, maybe pause and think about it. Why did he use his Jax Q now? Why did he use his hook now? I don't think I would have done that. at here? Or why didn't he use it? I probably would have gone for a hook here. Why didn't he use it? Break it down and try to come up with some sort of conclusion. You're not going to get the right conclusion every time, but you're going to learn way more doing it that way, trying to imagine yourself in their shoes and noting down the important things that they do differently to you. Maybe they played for the wave level 1 and then attack level 2 where you were attacking level 1. Really write down the differences they're doing over you, the notable things when they clash with your view of what you would do while watching it. Note it down, think about it, and really build that intention of the little details they do well in the matchup. And this brings us to our final step, writing down the key details that they do differently to you. Now, if they do a bunch of things differently, you can write them all down. It will stay in your mind a lot better if you write them down compared to just watching and trying to think about it. But make sure you summarize at the end. Write down and note the 2 or 3 main differences, the key details that you want to do differently next time you play that matchup. Pretty much the main takeaways, because you do not want to be going back to your notes maybe 3-4 weeks later when you play the same matchup again. You scroll down and have your eyeballs blasted by this big wall of text of 30 or 40 things that Zeus did better than you. You want to have 2 or 3 main points, main takeaways that you try to actively change the next time you play that matchup. So for example, if you're playing Jax against Camille, you'd probably write down, oh, every time the Camille W'd him, he Q'd in response, so she couldn't hit the outer ring. Let me try that. And he always did an early E so that she couldn't get passive. That would be 2 main takeaways that you could apply straight away. And you don't have to try to do 30, 40 things at once, just 1, 2, 3 things better than you did last time, and try to add more and more as you go every time you play the matchup. That's how you build that mastery up over time, not trying to go from getting wrecked to instantly destroying them back to back. You want to fix multiple things at the same time, but sometimes that'll be enough. Sometimes you just doing 2 or 3 things better than your opponent is going to give you the edge, because I guarantee they're not putting in as much work as you do if you follow this process. How to review a matchup. So now I'm going to be going through 3 steps that you can follow to really help you streamline your review process, because I do not want you to spend 30 or 40 minutes per matchup. That's just way too long. It's going to be hard to really apply all of that. Every review should take between 3 and 8 minutes. It's the sweet spot depending on the difficulty of the matchup. Now, step 1, check the priority. Did it differ to your experience or your educated guess in the matchup? Did you think about it and try to come to a conclusion of who should get priority? And then when you watch a VOD of high-level players playing it, does it differ to your experience? Is it different who gets priority and who doesn't? And then if the VOD that you're watching is different, try to think actively about why, and then watch the execution of what they did differently, if they got priority, or maybe watch what their opponent did to get priority, because knowing what your opponent does is important. Because if, let's say, the Darius should get priority versus Garen, I like that example, but you versus Darius in silver and gold that's just chilling, just last hitting, picking his nose, then you could of course get priority and abuse that level 2 advantage. So make sure it's not as simple as he gets priority, let me put my hands up and let him get priority. You need to be actively watching and making sure he's following the correct steps to get priority or not, because in some matchups they're going to have to do a lot. They're going to have to Darius Q the wave or something like that. So if they're not doing that and you see them just chilling, you can ego pro up against them. Now that brings us to step 2, review the trades through the lens of the enemy top so that you can see his cooldowns. You can left click him when you watch him through the client and see their cooldowns, and then you can see, because in high ranked games both parties are playing around the cooldowns extremely well. Of course some will make mistakes, but you'll get a really good idea of, okay, playing super aggressive here because Ambessa's Q still has 4-second cooldown, or he baited out the Jaxi, the Fiora vs Jax matchup. Jax has no E for 17, the Fiora is playing completely crazy now that Jax's E is down. If you review it through the lens of the opponent, you can see why your teammate or the player playing your champion is playing super aggressive at certain timings or playing passive, and same with the enemy as well, so that you can know what to look out for when you're trying to punish your opponent. And step 3, start writing down matchup goals that line up with the VOD that you're watching. Now, the goals don't have to be super complicated. That just has to be something that you're doing better than you did the last time that you played that matchup. It could be get priority. It could be abuse your level 2 versus 1, or it could be a little bit more complicated. It could be bait the Jax to use a Z by fake auto-attacking him, and then when it's on cooldown, play crazy, play aggressive, punish him during that spell is on cooldown. So punishing a cooldown, getting priority, playing for the first recall, and getting the item advantage. These are all good examples of goals that you're going to pick up on from watching this player's VOD and actively thinking about what you're doing while watching him. When he does something different, when he does something that feels better than what you would do, you can write it down. You can set 1 or 2 of those as your matchup goal, and if you set a couple of goals every time you play the matchup, when you lose the next time, maybe you watch it again and set another couple of goals and just get better and better as you're going, and I guarantee you're gonna have success after just a couple of tries, because if you're setting goals and actively trying to work on them every time, you're gonna have a big advantage over your opponent. Now, even though there are hundreds of different matchups at this point, if not thousands, and which brings a lot of variables, there are 4 main ones that you can play around in any matchup that you play in. The first one being who gets priority. It's really important that you build an understanding of who should get pushed in the matchup so that you can play around that. If you get priority, it probably means you're stronger level 1, gonna have the level 2 advantage, level 3 advantage, you're gonna have that minion wave advantage that whole time, so you can go into that lane with that confidence, even if you're quite scared of a champion like Ilaoi. If you know your champion does get prior against her, you're gonna be much more likely to punish her during that early lane, and the same applies on the reverse. If you know the opponent should get priority, you're not going to get caught off guard by their level 1 power, their level 2 advantage, or anything like that if you know that heading into it. But it is important to be open-minded. Just because your opponent should get priority doesn't mean they always will, especially if they're a low skill player, like a jungle main trying to play top lane. They might just sit there, last sitting, picking their nose. You can get priority up against them and catch them off guard, even though their champion should be doing it. Don't tunnel on off roll, don't get lost in the weeds. It's just an example. Just watch what they're doing. If they're not walking up and hitting the wave, if they're not using spells on the wave like they did, and the VOD that you watch, probably they don't understand the matchup as well as you do, so you might be able to ego priority up against them. The second thing to play around is your opponent's major abilities, and if you haven't played the champion a bunch or versed it that often, look them up on the wiki. Look them up and read what the cooldown is of the spell, what the ability does if you're not really that sure, and get a better understanding before that game begins. There are a lot of cooldowns which are pretty much mandatory for the champion to play around, like Fiora parry, Jax E, Darius E. So if you know when that spell's down and how long it's down for, you have a massive time to punish. Jax E is like 17-second cooldown. That's a lot of room to punish him. Darius E is like 26. Vladimir W 28. There are so many massive cooldown spells in the game, which is really hard for the opponent to get you off them or to defend themselves if that spell is down. So it's really important that you're actively looking to punish your opponent when their major abilities is down. And I say major because a minor ability would be like Camille Q. That is still something you can punish. That is still something you can play around, but it's not quite the same as Camille passive. So make sure you're mainly playing around the major abilities of your opponent. And the next variable, runes and summoner spells. So this one's actually a little bit more complicated. So a good example is Olaf versus Jax. If he takes Grasp, D-Shield, and TP, he wants short trades, and Olaf can actually get priority because when Jax is on cooldown, he has to respect your all-in. But if Jax goes Lethal Tempo, Ignite, and D-Blade, that's completely different. He's going to be a lot stronger level 1. He can brute force it, so you have to give him priority if that's the case. So I wouldn't get too lost in the sauce on this one. Just keep it in mind when you're loading into a game. If you watched the matchup recently, but you see, oh, this guy's taking Ignite and Lethal Tempo, this guy took Conqueror, probably he's going to play a lot more aggressive, a lot bigger trades than what I'm used to, so I do have to play around that. Maybe don't give him extended trades if he has lethal tempo conk. Maybe respect the all-in timer of Ignite and try to use your TP, things of that nature. Make sure you're not just playing the matchup like it's a copy-paste every time, because they can change those two things up. And finally, how your spells interact with theirs. Now, this one's the more complicated of all four, but what this means is you have to really critically think to play matchups consistently at a high level, even if you don't have much experience in it. You need to be critically thinking about how your spells can interact with theirs. So an easy example would be if Jax Q's onto me and I'm Poppy, I'm going to use W on his Q. That's like a level 1 example of that spell. Or I want to use my Garen W on the Jax's E. That's like a level 1 as well. So those are more basic examples of matchup spell interactions. My spell beats their spell in that way. And a more advanced one would be, okay, Fiora versus Jax, it's pretty hard to parry his E because he gets to pick the timing. So when he Qs onto me, I'm going to parry straight away and then dodge his E with my Q and then come back in. If I Q perfectly, the Q will still hit him or a minion, cooldown refresh, and then I can go back in. That's an example of a more advanced matchup interaction with the abilities. Now, again, you're not going to know every single interaction for your matchups, but just think about it. Just think about, okay, how can I play around their major abilities? It might be something like I'll use my Q on Jax to bait the Vladimir's W and hold my E, and then I'll go onto him with E so he can't dodge my E with his pull. That'd be a great example of playing around it. Or Jax vs Camille, we mentioned it before. If I use E just before she hits me, she can't auto attack me, she can't get her passive onto me, so she's not going to be able to block my damage with her shield. So really start to critically think, okay, their major abilities is this is how I'm going to play around it, and make sure you go into their game with a rough plan. Even if you never played the matchup before, if you went into it with that idea of how my spells can beat their spells, you're going to have a much higher success rate overall. Now, to finish up this guide, I'm going to be quickly going through an example of how I would review a matchup. So the reason I picked this one, Olaf vs Jax, is Jax after the buff, extremely popular, picked almost every game, so I really want to fine tune the matchup as I have been struggling a little bit more into him than I normally do. So I've decided to watch the best Olaf in Korea. You can watch the best players on your server, doesn't matter, but if I'm on Korea, of course I'm going to be utilizing that resource. Now, we can see level 1, this is a lethal tempo Ignite Jax, so he chose to give prior, just like we talked about before, so that lines up with my view of the matchup. So if I'm playing Olaf, what I would do differently is pretty much the same right now. I'm just lethal tempo Ignite Jax, I would chill a little bit level 1, and then I would go to try to get his bone plating with my Q. That's exactly what he does really shortly, holding on to it till now, till the Jax stops for the minion, so a high chance Q. So far so good. This is lined up with what I'd want to do at the same position in this matchup. So we can see just farming with Q, and now what I'd want to do is respect this Jax's level 2. So I'm assuming that's exactly what he's going to do as well. So yep, respects to level 2. He doesn't want to take any damage so that when he's level 3, he can actually attack a lot more on the bounce back. So now the wave you can see blocking it from crashing, really good. So the Jax going for a 3-wave crash, which is okay, but the Jax's wave wave control was a little bit sloppy. So I'd hope to see this Olaf go for a punish. So boom, this is something that he did really well here, is trying to bait the Jax in just on the perfect outer ring of the tower. So pretends to pick up the axe. This is one thing I don't think I'll do if I'm shadow boxing, playing in this position, is fake pick up the axe. I think that was really good by him. It's not just faking going for a minion, he's faking going for the axe pickup. So pretends to go for it, wanting the Jax to QE him. Because if he does pick up the axe at one extra step, Jax is not going to be in tower range, but like just the perfect range of the fake axe pickup and to step back. Baits the Jax Q, and he's just perfectly in the tower range. So I think that was really, really beautifully done by this Olaf. Not just faking going for a trade, a fake E, or a fake last hit, fake for the axe pickup, and steps back under tower, so that when the Jax Q's in, he makes him take a tower shot. And then boom, pops the ghost instantly here. So I really, really like what he did here. So I would say my biggest takeaway, the main thing I would change going into this matchup, was the fact that I think I've been a little bit too cowardly with my ghost usage. I haven't had that dog in me to just pop ghost and run down a lethal tempo ignite Jax. I'll do it versus a grasp Jax, of course. But looking at this trade pattern, if you bait out the Jax's E and pop ghost, the tower shot is a nice little bonus. But even without the tower shot, he still wins this very, very clearly. So that, of course, the tower shot's not going to be replicable every time. But the thing that is baiting out the Jax's E and then just popping ghost and straight brute forcing it when the Jax's E is on cooldown. So really, really good stuff from him. That would be my main takeaway from this matchup. The second one would be is the fake axe pickup. It's something that I've probably done myself a couple of times, but it's not something that I'm actively trying to do. Fake them out, pretend to go for the axe and step backwards. So it's definitely something I'm going to be doing a lot more moving forward, especially when I'm just on that outer ring of the tower. So those would be my two main takeaways. Those are going to be the two biggest things I change next time I play this matchup. And something you'll notice, this review didn't take 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I'm not going to go through the entire lane. I'm not going to write down, 5,000 different things. You can write down a few more details if it's something that it's unexpected to you. That's fine. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to write down 10, 20 notes, but just keep in mind your review process shouldn't take all day. It shouldn't be super long. You don't want to get lost in the sauce too much. Just get 2 or 3 crispy, big takeaways, some juice to apply to your next game, and then you're going to be doing a lot better than you did last time. And again, it's not going to take all day. And in my opinion, less is more. If you spend 30, 40 minutes, it's going to dilute the big takeaways that you learn from, because you're going to have so much extra stuff that's not going to be as impactful as the main source. Alright team, that's it for now. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like if you learned a thing or two. And as usual, if you have any questions, let me know. Any video suggestions, I'll be happy to keep them in mind. And I'll see you all next time.